It's me again. I know, I'm late on this, but I have a very good reason. It was agonizing to play this game. So initially, I said that I was going to wait until every single installment of the Final Fantasy VII Remake project was out before I played anything. And I was going to hold to that, but after a while, I started hearing a few things about the remake that kind of got me nervous. So eventually, finally decided to just sit down and play the game. And I'm glad I did, because what I found in the game was just something I did not like. A lot of changes were made, and I knew that going in, but the changes that were made, not all of them were to my liking. For instance, one of the biggest changes, and I knew this going into the game, but I was still disappointed with it, is the change in gameplay. So, the original Final Fantasy VII was a turn-based game, and now the remake is an action one. I mean, yeah, sure, they have an ATB gauge in there for some odd reason, and there is an option to kind of change the game to being similar to the original turn-based gameplay of the original game, but it's just not the same at all. It seems that every game these days is an action game, more or less, and I really do feel like there's room for a turn-based game. I mean, Pokemon is doing fine, isn't it? That's still the most popular franchise of all time, and the main games in that series are all turn-based. Pokemon seems to be fine being turn-based, so I really don't see why Final Fantasy VII Remake couldn't have been turn-based either. I think another thing I didn't like was the fact that you can only control one character at a time in the game. Yes, technically you can issue commands to the other characters, but even still, the way it's done, it really doesn't feel like... It feels less like I'm using a group and working as a team. It feels more like I'm just controlling one person, and sometimes I get to tell the other people what to do. It's not as much fun as the original. Like I said before, the ATB gauge is there, and after it fills up, you can use it to execute special commands, or use spells, or use items if you want. Otherwise, you can just hack and slash, or punch and kick, or shoot as much as you want at your enemies. But the thing is, the AI for your teammates is not very good, because every so often, well, not even every so often, every single time, when they have the ATB gauges filled up, they do nothing with them. Not even using spells against enemies that they would have an advantage against, or using an item when they need to. There is a special material that you can get that'll have the person who uses it heal anyone who needs it a certain amount of times during battle, but it's weird that you can't actually just make that a command in the settings. Like, as much as people, joke that Donald in Kingdom Hearts never heals you, you can actually alter his behavior so that he will heal you more often. You can go to the settings and adjust his AI so that he'll heal you all the time, or even you can change it so that he never heals you, or that he heals you only in emergency situations. You can do this for every single party member too, not just Donald. So it's weird as hell to me that the same sort of thing isn't in this remake. It seems like if you're going to have your AI companions do whatever they want, it would be a good idea to be able to control them to that extent. If you can't control them directly like you can in the original game, get them to do whatever you need them to do. At the very least, you can have the AI battle how you want to. Like, have them use more magic when they can, have them use physical attacks, and have them use the special attacks when they have them available, but they never do. And that just makes battling... Kingdom Hearts kind of boils down to just you fighting against the enemies more often than not, sure. But even in Kingdom Hearts, you'll find that your party members can be useful. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, that's not the case. Your teammates just blindly attack, rush into battle whenever they want to, and it really puts more of the burden on you to do something. And considering that the enemies you fight in the game are complete damage sponges, that makes things even harder than it should be. Boss fights in the game are not exactly difficult. Not in my opinion, they're not difficult. But they become bothersome when every single enemy has astronomically high hit points. And all it does is it just boils down to just being a battle of attrition. You just have to outlast the enemy. Rather than you and the boss being able to trade blows back and forth, it's just you hammering away for... I think one boss fight I had lasted like 30 minutes, I think, give or take. And that boss fight wasn't really difficult either. It just... The boss had a lot of HP, more than he should have, and that doesn't exactly make the battles fun either. A battle that lasts that long starts to get boring after a while. And unfortunately, a good deal of the game itself was boring. I feel that if Square really wanted the gameplay to be more dynamic for today's modern age, they really could have just modeled the gameplay after something like Final Fantasy XII or even Dragon Quest XI. Both of those games are still turn-based, but they're a bit more dynamic than games before and after them, or before Dragon Quest XI at least. We'll see what Dragon Quest XII does. But Dragon Quest XI, yeah, sure, it's still turn-based, but you can actually move around the arena as you're playing. And granted, like with Final Fantasy XII, just because you can physically run away from your enemy doesn't mean you're not going to get hit by the attacks. That's fine. But still being able to move around freely, being able to move the camera around freely in those games, it brings a new level of involvement to what's going on. And if Final Fantasy VII had done that, the remake, if they had done that, I could have been behind that completely. It really feels like a missed opportunity to be able to blend those two elements together for the Final Fantasy franchise. If they had done the Dragon Quest XI thing going forward, I think a lot of people have been more appreciative of that change. I mean, sure, you still have people who don't like turn-based games, and that's fine. No one's saying you have to like turn-based games, but at the very least, having that level of control over the characters may have incentivized some people to at least give the series another look, or at least the Final Fantasy VII Remake another look. It's kind of a side thing though, but is it weird to anyone else that you can't jump in the game? I don't know, they're making this an action game basically, so it's weird to me that you can't jump. You can move up and down ladders, go through small and tight spaces, sure, but not being able to jump at all seems weird. I mean, I guess something like The Legend of Zelda, before Breath of the Wild that is, you couldn't jump exactly. Link would often come to a ledge and then kind of auto-jump himself, but you couldn't jump freely. I don't know, it's just a weird thing to me. That's not exactly a criticism of the game, but it's something odd to me. It's a small personal gripe I think that they should have put in there. So I had to switch cameras here for a second, so I apologize for the very jarring change in video quality, but I was not about to record that entire first part of the video again. That's done. And on that note, that brings me to my next part of the video, which is the very questionable story changes. Some of the changes made do not make a lot of sense, especially if you are someone who has played the game before. For one thing, the way the game basically telegraphs what's going to happen later on down the line is just an odd thing to include. The moments of the game when Cloud has visions of the future, those moments only make sense to someone who's actually played the original game. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense to anyone else. If you're new to Final Fantasy VII, those brief glimpses into the future aren't going to make any sense to you. And the way the game does it too is weird. It's knowingly doing it, as if to kind of say to fans of the original game, we know what's going to happen. New fans, they don't know, but we know. It's like a wink and a nod to fans of the original game, and really that does a big disservice to it, because the big thing about the original game was how when the plot twists come in, that something is wrong with Cloud's memories, and that the entire journey up to that point has actually been one big manipulation by Sephiroth. Those are jaw-dropping moments. Those are just huge bombs that are dropped on the audience. And the way that the game is basically telegraphing some of that, some of the more, some of the moments of the story we when you look back on it, it makes sense. The guy with the tattoo in his arm and the black cloak. You meet a few of those people throughout the game's story, and it's unknown who they are and what they're doing. There's even one moment when you meet one of the guys in Sector 5, but he's without the black cloak. So at first, you're not entirely sure that he's actually connected to those other people with black cloaks. But then once the truth comes out, that Cloud's memories are actually altered, and Sephiroth is actually controlling him, then it all clicks. It all comes together when you think back on it. But the way the remake is doing it, they're just telling you off the bat that something is wrong, rather than you piecing it together yourself. For instance, the way that Cloud gets these periodic headaches throughout the game. Now, obviously, that basically happened in the original game too. There was moments when the screen would flash white and Cloud would kind of recall something. And I don't know, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I feel like the way the original game did it, Granted, you have to take the limitations into consideration back then. There wasn't a very good way to kind of portray that, but to me, it kind of felt like whenever that happened, when the screen would flash white and Cloud would kind of stop for a second to remember something. To me, it felt a bit more organic and less of a tip off that something's wrong with his memories. Like, for instance, I think the biggest example of this for me is when Reno came to the church and Cloud was trying to remember something. He stops everything for a second, has a headache, stops, and then recalls the memory. But in the original game, when Cloud confronts Reno, he does stop for a second, but the way he talks, the way he reacts, you don't really get the sense that something's really off. Yeah, sure, the screen flashed white for a second, and that was kind of weird, but the way Cloud reacts, you don't think there's anything really wrong at first. So in the remake, Cloud stops, has the headache, which immediately tells you something is wrong with him. But in the original version of the game, the way I looked at it anyway, it seemed more along the lines of, Reno shows up, asks what's going on, and Cloud kind of confronts him and goes, "You're with the Turks, right? You're with the Turks." I mean, that's kind of what it seemed like to me. The way the screen flashes briefly for a second. It's like Cloud's actually trying to remember something, even though they're false memories, really. The way the original game does it, they were to play it off so smoothly that you don't really realize there's something wrong to begin with until it's too late. Like I said, then once you realize something is wrong, you look back at moments like that and you think, wow, there were red flags everywhere in the game, but I just didn't realize it until now. And I think that's something that the remake definitely gets wrong. It just tells you off the bat that something is wrong, rather than letting you piece it together down the line. Like I said, another big issue I had is that there's just a lot of bloat in the story, a lot of moments where the game forces you to do what are essentially side quests just to pad the game out, like having to go along with Jessie on her mission to go and steal different materials for her bombs. Like, so her logic behind it is that the bomb that they used to bomb the Sector 8 reactor, wasn't it? I think it was Sector 8 reactor, the one in the beginning of the game. I'm sorry, I don't remember which number it is, but that reactor. Her reaction is that when they blew up the sector, the reactor rather, the explosion was too big. So she thinks something's wrong with the bomb she made, that maybe the materials that she had were too powerful. So she wants Cloud to help her and Biggs and Wedge sneak into her parents' house so that she can get her father's ID because he works for Shinra. Then use that to get to the facility to get less powerful material. Wow, I'm saying it right now. It sounds so stupid. It was stupid before, but I'm saying it out loud right now. Less powerful material. It's like they're terrorist attacks. You're destroying these facilities. There had to be people who were still alive in those facilities. It wasn't just an empty facility in the middle of the night. It's a Mako reactor. There had to be workers who were still there doing the night shift, and you guys just rolled in and blew it up. There's no way you didn't kill people. Like, even if you're using a regular bomb, I guess, by Jesse's definition, you still killed people. Someone suffered from that. But to go and say, I think my bomb was too powerful, I need to make one that's less powerful. Well, that's just straight up dumb. And the entire sequence of you having to help Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge go to get this material is ridiculous. I think the only good thing about it was meeting Roche. I think it's how you pronounce his name, Roche or Roche. He's a soldier 3rd class. And I liked meeting him because, it adds to the lore of the game a bit. Soldier was always touted as being this elite fighting force that Shinra has at their beck and call, but you never actually see them. I'm sure much later on in the original game, you fight some 2nd and 3rd class soldiers, and I think a couple of 1st class soldiers as well. I have to go back and look. But they were just NPCs. They were just random encounters when you get back into Midgard later on in the game. And by that point in time, they're a cakewalk. They're not an issue for you because your party is so powerful at that point. So Soldier being this fighting force, this elite fighting force, didn't really make much of an impact in the game. I mean, if anything, they could have just changed the story to, even now in the remake, if they just changed it to Cloud and Sephiroth are part of the military, absolutely nothing changes. But by introducing someone like Roche into it, showing that Soldier is a bigger threat, I'd say that actually does improve things a bit. But it still doesn't make up for having to go along with Jesse on this, what essentially is a side quest. A similar thing happens later on in the game too with Leslie in the sewers. He's helping you get to Don Corneo. He has the key to get to him in his safe house. But his key gets stolen. They have to go and track down the monster who took it. And then it turns out it's not actually the key. It's a necklace from his former fiance. That was a waste of time too. I mean, okay, so I get having Leslie, he's a new character for the remake. Having him accompany you to get to Don Corneo, okay, that's fine. I'm fine with that. But having to deal with losing the key, which wasn't the key at all, to get into the safe house, that was another waste of time. And that's like almost the entire game too. It wastes time. Having to do an underground tournament at Wall Market for no reason other than to pad the game's length. Having to do the side quest basically with Jesse, dealing with Leslie in the sewer, like all that just wastes time. And there's a lot of it in the game. Even going down certain pathways that you did in the original. Granted, they're bigger, they're longer because this is a remake. They can do more with that, but having to fight scripted fights, random enemies, it just gets in your way. A lot of this stuff is just in your way, stopping you from getting to the parts of the game that you actually want to play and see. And that's a super big issue with the game. I'm not alone in saying that pacing is a very bad problem with the remake, and hopefully that's something they fix down the line. Some of the character motivations were a bit weird too. Like Cloud's thing in the beginning of the game is that he's a mercenary, right? He does whatever he needs to do for money. So when he gets back from the bombing mission and he asks Tifa about the money he's owed, she tells him that she doesn't have the money. That there's no money to give him at all. Not, I'm sorry, Cloud, I don't have the money on me, but I can get it to you tomorrow. I know where it is. We go there tomorrow, we get the money. But instead, what Tifa tells Cloud is that there is no money, period. She has nothing to give him.
So then, what can I get you?
My money. I'm still waiting on it.
Right. About that, we should talk outside before we get on to money. There's an empty apartment in a place just down the road. It's nothing fancy, but I was thinking you could stay there for now. The landlady's a big friend of the cause, so you wouldn't even have to pay rent. Sound good?
Sure does. Thanks.
Follow me then.
There's one thing. My money. You guys owe me 2,000, remember?
I do. And we'd love to settle up, especially since this was your first job for us, but...
That's it?
Sorry. We spent the rest preparing for the mission. That really is it. But not for long. I'm collecting money for filters tomorrow, so I can pay you after.
Okay, so then why did Cloud stay? And his whole thing is he did this mission. First of all, he did it as a favor to Tifa. That's one thing. But he also did it because he wanted to get paid for it. And now that there's no money for him, why did he stick around? There was no reason for him to stay. He should have just left. But instead, Tifa shows him to his apartment. He's going to be staying up for a little while. And Cloud just accepts it. He doesn't question anything about the money. He doesn't question the living arrangements. Tifa tells him, sorry, Cloud, no money for you. And Cloud just shrugs his shoulders and sits down. Doesn't say anything else. Doesn't. Not that he would ever actually yell at Tifa or anything like that, but he doesn't get upset at all about it. He doesn't say anything like, oh, come on, Tifa. Like, I asked, you can't ask me to do this and then not have the money. You said you had the money for me. Like, I come back here and you said there's no money. Okay, thanks, Tifa. It was good seeing you again. Okay, it's good seeing you. I gotta go. And then you'd have the moment when, actually, that would be a good idea, though, actually. Then you have the moment when Tifa reminds Cloud of their childhood promise, which for some reason was moved to the side quest with Jesse for some reason. That childhood promise only has meaning if Tifa's the one who has to remind Cloud about it, because he was ready to go. Like, he didn't appreciate Barrett's attitude. He didn't like Avalanche. He didn't get paid immediately in the original game, so he was about to leave. So then Tifa had to remind him, like, hey, you promised to protect me, remember? You promised to be my hero. And staying here and helping us, you'll be doing that. You'll be protecting me and being my hero. Remember, Cloud? Having Tifa be the one to remind Cloud about it, it is guilt-tripping him. But at the same time, it's kind of necessary from Tifa's end of things. Because, for one thing, they need the help, Avalanche. And for another, it's a way for Tifa to keep an eye on Cloud, to keep him close to her because she's worried about him. She needs Cloud to be next to her and to keep him safe, and this is the best way to do it. If you move that to the side quest thing where Cloud happens to remember the promise on his own, yeah, that makes no sense, honestly. It just makes more sense for Tifa to be the one to remind him because they are childhood friends. Because I don't know about, like, in the beginning of the game at least, if Cloud would or wouldn't admit it, but he is in love with Tifa and she's in love with him, which is why that promise means so much to the both of them, especially to Tifa. That promise is what helps bind them together in the beginning of the game, and by spending so much time with each other as the game progresses, they become closer and closer, which helps accentuate the love triangle between the two of them and Aerith down the line as well. But having Cloud randomly remember it during a situation that's completely unrelated to Tifa or anything, it deflates that. It really deflates, and especially in the way that Tifa reacts to it too. Like, oh boy, he remembered. Oh, that's good. So he's gonna stay.
Well, seems this old friend of mine's in a tight spot. A long time ago, I said I'd be there for her. Made a promise. So...
Can't say this is quite what I had in mind when I put that on you way back when.
Even though, again, there's no reason for him to stay at all, though. Again, no money. He was basically lied to, so he should have left. Yeah, that whole part of the game really doesn't make much sense. And I gotta say, early in the game, Tifa doesn't make much sense either. Like, they tried to portray her as being someone who's so kind-hearted she couldn't even dream about hurting another person, which is kind of true. That's not exactly wrong. But you have Tifa saying that she hates Avalanche as an eco-terrorist group.
I know we have to think big if we're going to make a difference, but not like this. I feel trapped.
But then at the same time, she's harboring Avalanche and partying with them after a successful mission.
Tifa, time to celebrate. Break out all the good stuff.
Oh, sure.
Avalanche!
That hit the spot.
Damn, Biggs. Slow down.
Keep it tight. Ain't no room for error come tomorrow.
More reason to live it up now.
Yep, best way to clear your head so you can focus when it counts.
It's been too long since we did this.
Not since we went on that all-night bender after HQ gave us the boot.
They did not give us the boot.
It was an amicable separation.
Just thinking about it's making me mad again.
Can't believe it's already been a year. I don't know how we managed.
Well, I do. It was you guys going above and beyond. Thank you.
No need for that, boss. We all knew what we were signing up for.
Yeah, but when shit hits the fan, it's good to know you in my corner. End of the day, you're all I got.
Happy to look out for you, like I know you'll look out for me.
So long as someone looks out for my stomach.
Tifa's got you covered there.
As a friend or as a cook?
As if you really gotta ask.
Hey,
Right?
little guy, you need anything?
Yeah, that tickled.
I guess it is kind of obvious.
You know, it'd be really cool if we could do this again tomorrow night.
Oh, we will. Avalanche!
Avalanche! You heard him. It's on for
Why
sure.
not every night?
You guys. Don't take this the wrong way, but right now I need to spend time with the gang. We'll talk later. I promise.
I mean, in the original game, Tifa was all in on the terrorist train. Shinra had wronged everyone in the group at some point in time in some way or another, and Tifa was all in on revenge. Eco-terrorism or not, she wanted to get back at Shinra, and she was willing to do whatever she needed to do that. But the remake tries to frame her as caring about people, but then still being an eco-terrorist. It's one or the other. You really can't have it be both. Like, if the remake had done something like, say, frame things so that Tifa was being forced to help Avalanche for one reason or another, then maybe you could play off the whole she's kind-hearted and doesn't want to hurt other people angle, but she's with Avalanche for specific reasons. But the remake still tries to, again, play both sides of that, and it really doesn't work. And this whole I don't want to hurt people thing disappears very quickly too. So again, it's another thing. So what's the point? What's the point of having that and then not committing to it? Speaking of Avalanche, it's weird that in the remake, Avalanche is, rather than being a small eco-terrorist group, now it's a much bigger group with multiple different cells apparently working, I don't know, throughout Midgar or throughout the world, I guess. What's weird about that is the fact that Avalanche being a smaller group made them harder to track down and harder to figure out their numbers, harder to figure out what was going on with them. But now they're a much bigger group with apparently a leader other than Barrett, which makes no damn sense at all, honestly. In the original game, Barrett created Avalanche as a way to stop Shinra and everything they were doing. He went to Cosmo Canyon and realized that what Shinra was doing, the Mako reactors, they're hurting the entire planet, not just his hometown of Coral and everything. So he decided to create Avalanche, or if you go by the expanded universe material, he restarted Avalanche since there was an incarnation of the group before. That's way back in before Crisis, Final Fantasy VII, a game that focused on the Turks. That's something else, right? Entirely. Barrett created Avalanche, or restarted it, depending how you want to look at it, to combat Shinra. So the fact that there's a much larger organization that apparently Barrett's cell is under, again, makes no sense. Like, how can they be this big of an organization, yet Shinra and everyone else in Midgar has no idea who they actually are? No one's ever seen the face of a potential member of this bigger Avalanche, and no one knows the faces or names of the main group that you work with in the game. But there's this bigger structure to it. There's a headquarters and everything, yet they do absolutely nothing to help Barrett's group in the game at all. And then for some weird reason, the mayor of Midgar is also a member of Avalanche. He's a member of some unknown cell. That's the weirdest thing too. Like, he says he's a member of Avalanche when you come to talk to him, but then it never says anything more than that.
I can only assume your cell wasn't looped in. I am Avalanche's man on the inside.
Say what?
Huh. Is it really that surprising to you?
It's a situation of how is nobody asking any questions about this? You're part of Avalanche. Which cell? Who's your leader? When was this put together? You helping us, when? For what? Where's everybody else? None of those questions are ever asked, but you just accept the fact that the mayor of Midgar is part of Avalanche, which of course he is, because that's the way they wrote the story. It still doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that he's part of Avalanche, because you can't not compare it to the original game. Original game, the mayor simply wanted to get back at Shinra for basically turning the position of the mayor into basically just a desk job with nothing for him to do. In essence, President Shinra was the true ruler of Midgar, while the mayor did nothing but sit behind a desk in a small office, bored out of his skull all day. He knew that Shinra was bad news, but he couldn't do anything to actually stop them. But he knew that Cloud and the others were fighting against them, so he openly helped them in order to try to loosen Shinra's grip on the city. That in itself makes sense. Having the mayor want to fight against Shinra, whom he knows is a terrible organization, makes sense. Having him help on his own makes more sense than having him be a secret member of Avalanche. And again, we don't know which part of Avalanche. We don't know where, I guess, whoever the main leader of Avalanche actually is or anything. They're just out there doing who knows what. I mean, you never even hear any news of like some other part of Avalanche doing something in another part of Midgar or another part of the planet. If Avalanche in the remake actually is as big and powerful as they seem to be, why have we heard nothing of them doing anything at all in the game? Period. It's just, it comes off just as another odd, unnecessary change, and one that affects nothing in the game at all, really. Another weird thing was the way Wall Market was portrayed in the game. So, in the original, Wall Market came off to me more like just kind of a makeshift place where a bunch of people set up shops because they had no other place to go to. They had no other materials to use. They had the junk there in the slums. They put it to use, and Wall Market was the result of that. And Don Corneo aside, it was fine. But the remake tries to make Wall Market out to be this kind of hellhole in the middle of Midgar, as if the rest of Midgar and the slums was any better. The way that Aerith describes Wall Market in the remake makes it sound like something akin to the Mos Eisley Space Cantina in Star Wars.
The underside of Sector 6, Wall Market, a real special place. Well, it took a lot of people to build Midgar, and they all needed to blow off steam. So some traders built an entertainment district. Inns, shops, bars, the works. Folks started pouring in from all over. Business was booming, money was flowing, which attracted the attention of some guys who didn't much care for the law.
And now there isn't any.
Right. But instead of trying to solve the problem, the government decided to just wall it in. And that's how Wall Market began. Out of sight, out of mind, as the old saying goes. For the folks in charge, there's no better way to deal with it.
When you actually go to Wall Market, it seems fine to me. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it at all. It seems more like it's just a play, like the original game. It's someplace that was just put together using makeshift materials because the people there had no other choice. And it seems like it has an active nightlife than anything. It seems fine to me. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it other than Don Corneo's place in the Honeybee Inn. So it's weird to hear Eric describe it as something akin to, again, the Mos Eisley Space Cantina, and then go there and see like, oh, it's fine. It seems more like kind of an indie spot that you go to because there are a lot of nice local restaurants and the people there are friendly enough. Almost like it's like a city that parties all the time. I don't see the issue with that. I don't see what's wrong with Wall Market the way that Eric tries to describe it. Now, obviously, the big issue with Wall Market is not Wall Market itself, technically, but it is, as I mentioned before, Don Corneo and the Honeybee Inn. Those two places are just a huge black spot, or two black spots, if you want to look at it that way, in what is otherwise a decent place. I don't know if you actually want to live in Wall Market or maybe even near it. Well, you know what? The slums are the slums. It sucks. It sucks everywhere in the slums. So I don't know. I don't know where your options, I guess, on whether or not you actually want to live there. But Don Corneo's place is definitely sketchy as hell. And to its credit, I'll say this: the remake actually made the place even creepier. And actually, I say that as a good thing. Corneo and his men come off 10 times creepier than they did in the original game. Corneo is even sitting there taking pictures when he's alone with the woman that he chose.
Nobody here but you and me. Oh, you're even cuter than I thought.
Back off.
Ooh! This kitten's got claws! I love it!
What was that?
Don't you worry your pretty little head. Just a picture to preserve the moment.
And the way that Corneo's men were speaking to Aerith and Tifa and Aerith were absolutely going to be raped that night.
Hey, yo, fellas! We got guests, and y'all got first crack at entertaining them.
Oh, yeah!
Courtesy of the ever-generous Don Corneo himself. Never forget, the Don provides.
Yeah. Good day! Oh!
I can only imagine what would have happened if he had gotten Tifa in his room. Actually, wait, I've seen that hentai, actually. I've seen several variations of that hentai. One thing, though, I didn't like how the Honeybee Inn was changed. It went from being basically a love hotel in the original game, along with apparently being very open to other, more risque things. If certain paths you take while there or anything to go off of. You also have the option to even peek into some of the keyholes, which, voyeurism aside, the people there were... Okay, sex was not the only thing people were doing there. That's all I can really say. The Honeybee Inn was creepy for so many reasons. But changing it to basically a nightclub in the remake, I don't know, it makes it less creepy. It makes it less disturbing. From what I've seen, apparently Tetsuya Nomura wanted to change the Honeybee Inn from being a love hotel that allows you to also do other very strange things to a nightclub, because apparently he said that the Honeybee Inn would just make people uncomfortable if they brought it back in its original state. Well, yeah, man. Again, it's the slums. It sucks dick in the slums. Don Corneo, everything he is, everything he stands for, nothing but uncomfortableness emanates from him. There was the overwhelming sense that when you step into Corneo's mansion, that you will be raped at some point. Not something bad could happen, or you get a bad vibe from the place. If you go in there, rape is happening. There's no doubt it's going to happen, one way or the other. The remake showed what happened with Aerith and Tifa. The original game showed what happened with Cloud, what could have happened with him. Everything associated with Corneo is terrible. And you can follow that in the game. If you get to Wutai, even, he kidnaps Elena and Yuffie and tries to get one of them to marry him. Keep in mind, Yuffie is still supposed to be 16 in the game, and I have no idea how old Elena is, but still, he kidnaps them and tries to force them to make one or the other. Oh no, maybe both. Maybe he wants to rebuild his harem or something. I don't know, but he does it. Everything about Don Corneo is unpleasant. So I don't see the point in changing the Honeybee Inn from a very strange establishment that he happens to own and run into being a nightclub. And on that note too, I really do miss how in the original game you had to go and actually build Cloud's disguise yourself. Depending on your selections during that section of the game, the cross-dressing section of the game, your disguise would either work and get you into Corneo's room, which there's actually a trophy for that in the PS4 version if you actually manage to do that. If you pick the wrong things, Corneo won't choose you, and he'll choose either Tifa or Aerith. And being able to put the costume together yourself, and that was fun for me. I liked doing that. It involves you more in what's going on, rather than having to do that underground tournament, which again wastes time, in order to gain the favor of Don Corneo's 3 special agents, more or less. And then going to the Honeybee Inn and having to do a dance-off with Andrea, the proprietor of the place. I don't know, to me that wasn't as much fun. You know, especially since Cloud he just had this stony face the entire time. I mean, that wasn't fun either. Some people may have found it funny that tough guy Cloud had to do this dance-off, but the way Cloud reacted to it made it a lot less fun for me. I mean, yeah, sure, it's cute seeing Aerith out there in the crowd clapping for Cloud and cheering him on and everything, but if Cloud had been more into it, or maybe even showing even more open disgust about what he had to do, it could have been more fun. When someone like Dante has to do something ridiculous like play a rock concert or do a poetic duet with one of his enemies, or does a Michael Jackson impression in the middle of a demonic tree, those are fun to see because Dante is all in with it. He leans into the ridiculousness of it all. That's what makes those moments fun. But for Cloud, he had just this straight blank face the entire time. He was not having fun at all. Like if you framed it as Cloud maybe kind of getting into it, and then in the end deciding, you know what, if I'm doing this, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to show up this guy at his own game, getting more into it, and actually outperforming Andrea in the dances, getting Andrea's respect in that way. That could have been more fun. You know, that would have been a bit less ridiculous to me. And it even could have been funny to see Cloud actually kind of getting into it and wanting to outdo the guy doing this dance-off. Or again, have Cloud be even more irritated with the entire thing. Have him keep doing it. He's doing it, but he's not having fun with it at all. That could have been enjoyable too. But just have him have a blank face the entire time as if he's not even registering what's going on. I don't see what's fun about that. He's doing the dances, yes, but like he may as well just be a robot. The way he acted. And you know what? Since I'm on Cloud and the way he's been acting, another weird thing is the fact that a few times in the game, Cloud acted like so socially unaware. It's super strange. Like when Aerith tried to high-five him a couple of times, Cloud acted like he didn't even know what a high-five was. Like he couldn't comprehend what she was trying to do with him. Cloud's a stoic guy, yeah, but he's not socially inept. I mean, if you think about the beginning of the game, when you go to the what is it called? It's the part of the game where you can go and learn the tutorials, the basics of combat and everything. Like Cloud is so open and casual with the people there, you know, because again he's channeling Zack's personality there, but he's so open with those people. He's just one of the guys. And then you have him in this moment where someone's trying to give him a high five and he doesn't know what to do. He figures out eventually, yes, but that's just so awkward to have. Especially when he seems fine in other moments. Like when Jesse's trying to openly flirt with him, he gets what she's doing, but he just blows her off because he's not interested in her. Like if she was flirting with him and he didn't know how to respond to it, okay, I guess that's one thing. I guess you can maybe say Cloud's not used to being flirted at because, you know, Aerith and Tifa, they didn't exactly flirt with Cloud, but they did, you know, spend time with him and try to get his attention in their own ways. So maybe Cloud's used to that. But if someone openly flirting with him, yeah, sure, you can maybe you could reason that he's not used to that. But Jesse does that, and Cloud just blows her off. He gets what she wants. He just doesn't care. And then you have Aerith, who's also acting openly friendly towards him with the high fives, and he doesn't know how to react to that. I feel like that's just bad writing. And it's just another forced situation to make him seem awkward when he really isn't. Side note, trying to elevate Jesse as a third possible love interest just does not work. I mean, for one thing, Jesse came off more as annoying to me, especially considering the whole side quest thing you had to do with her, because she just had to make a less powerful bomb for their terrorist actions. The fact that I know off the bat that she's going to die, I just could not bring myself to care about her. Yeah, okay, yes, Aerith dies too, I get that, but like her death was much more meaningful because she wasn't just a one-off character, more or less. She's part of the group. So when she does die, you really feel it. With Jessie in the remake, her advances just came off as just completely useless because you knew they were never going to work. Cloud has always only had eyes for Tifa, and then eventually Aerith comes into his life, and now he's second-guessing himself more or less about, you know, which woman he might be in love with. Jessie never had a chance. And considering they tried to elevate her as a third possible love interest compared to the original game, where, yeah, I'll be honest, like, when she dies in the original game, her, Biggs, and Wedge, I felt nothing in my heart for that. I felt nothing. I appreciated the fact that it, you know, it pushes the story forward. Shinra are the bad guys. The Turks are evil and everything. I get that. That's, yeah, sure. But when she dies in the remake, I could not be happier. I waved goodbye to her, and then I just moved on. I did not care. All right, let's keep moving forward now. Speaking of which, Biggs and Wedge. Okay, so here's the thing. Whether or not you actually care about the three of them, I feel that I didn't care about them, to be honest. But regardless, their deaths did help to motivate Cloud and Tifa and Barrett. Like, Cloud, sure, said he didn't care about them in the beginning of the game, and maybe that was kind of true, more or less. But he didn't want to see them die. He didn't want to see them to suffer. And when they did at the hands of Shinra, when they were trying to protect the Sector 7 plate, that did help motivate Cloud to fight against Shinra even more. And it helped Barrett a lot, too, since they were his men, part of his group. He got them into Avalanche. They all wanted to fight against Shinra and take them down together, and now they're gone. If anything, Barrett was the most motivated after seeing their deaths. So to turn around and then have Wedge survive, only to then eventually kill him off in the most meaningless way possible, and then turn around and have Biggs survive. Again, what is the point? Like, now their sacrifices, or lack of sacrifice, it's all meaningless now. Keeping them alive, or I guess keeping one of them alive, in this case it's Biggs, makes, again, it just makes no sense. The entire thing makes no sense. Because now it feels like Avalanche's actions had no real meaning to them. And then once again, you add on to the fact that there is apparently a larger organization out there that's doing nothing. I mean, all this extra stuff just does nothing, but I feel it just mars the story of the game, and even some of the characters. So speaking of that section of the game, when the Turks come to destroy the Sector 7 plate, or rather to disengage the Sector 7 plate to get it to fall down and crush the entire sector, one moment that I thought was really unnecessary to change, when Sung reveals that he kidnapped Aerith, and there's that moment when Aerith tries to talk to the others, there's just that one moment when Sung simply lifts his hand to kind of forbid Aerith from talking anymore, and she doesn't talk anymore. Like, he didn't physically stop you from talking, Aerith. You can keep talking. I thought Aerith was supposed to be this rebellious girl. Like, yeah, the sundress and everything, the kind of more magic-focused stats, the staff and everything. She's not a physical brawler like Tifa is, but she's, in some ways, a lot tougher than Tifa is. In the original game, when Sung revealed that he kidnapped Aerith and Aerith was there on the helicopter, she tried to call out to them and tell everyone that Marlene was fine and not to worry about her and everything. And to stop her from speaking anymore, Sung actually backhands her into unconsciousness. Like, one hit and she's down. But the remake, all he does is just lifts his hand, and that's her signal to just stop talking. Bad guy does bad thing. I don't understand why that's such a controversy there. And I think I understand why they changed that scene, but the way you change it doesn't make any sense. Like, if you'd done something like, she's trying to talk, and if you didn't want her to be hit by Sung or something, you could have had someone like come up behind her and maybe drug her or something to make her woozy and fall unconscious or something. Something like that. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you don't want to show her being physically attacked like that. But then again, Sung is the bad guy. So again, bad guy doing bad thing. I don't understand the change there. And then we finally make it to the Shinra Building after having to scale all that junk and another time-wasting section. And it's not I guess it's not a huge criticism of the game itself, I guess. But the moment when you're sneaking through the stairs to get into the Shinra Building, you know which moment I'm talking about, right? You know that one line of dialogue from Tifa. As Barrett is complaining more and more about the steps and getting tired from having to run up them so often, Tifa finally just loses her cool with him, and she's just, Barrett, will you stop acting like a retard and just climb the stairs? And then, Barrett's rebuttal to that is to not have one at all. And it's actually a funny moment, though, because, that line is coming from cute, little, innocent, adorable Tifa, and she's saying it to big, gruff and tough Barrett. And he has nothing to say back to her about it, because he knows he's being so ridiculous. He's complaining so much that they are just stairs, and they're all running up them and everything, sure. But the way he's reacting, Barrett knows he's just carrying on for no reason, and when Tifa calls him out on it, he stays quiet. I mean, it's a funny moment, And, okay, yeah, I get it. They couldn't say retard in the remake. I get that. But you could have at least kept the line in there and just have her say something. Well, you could keep the spirit of the line, is what I mean. Have her say something different. You have her say something akin to, "Oh, Barrett, we stop being so stupid and just climb the stairs." Or she could have said, "Barrett, you're being a baby. Just shut up and climb." Or she could even have said something like, "Barrett, will you just shut up and climb?" Any of those keeps the spirit of the original line without actually having to say the retard. I get why the line was taken out, but just keep the spirit of the moment in there. To me, that was a lot funnier, considering that, again, it's coming from small little dainty Tifa to someone big and tough like Barrett, who couldn't say anything back to her because he knows how ridiculous he's being. It's a small moment, sure. It doesn't make or break the game or anything, but it's a small little moment that I actually thought was funny, and I think that it adds to the charm of the original game. Also, what I thought was kind of funny was the moment when Tifa realized something was wrong as they were climbing the stairs. There's that one moment when Tifa stops walking up the steps. She realizes something, turns around, and walks behind Cloud and Barrett and tells them to go on ahead. Because what she realized in that moment, I'm wearing a skirt. And this entire time, they could probably see... You know what? You two going on up ahead of me. And what's funny is that Cloud and Barrett were both confused, because they actually weren't looking up her skirt the entire time. They were concerned about getting into the building. They weren't worried about her. But Tifa is worried about herself. So when she told them to go on ahead of her, they're both confused as hell. Like, okay, we'll go up first, I guess, but I don't see what the issue is. Again, it's the way that the scene was played out. It's not a make it or break it moment. It's just a funny scene that I wish they could have kept some sort of remnant in there, but I guess they couldn't because of the way they redesigned Tifa, which I'll get to in a minute. Not having Genova having broken out of that containment unit and then run amok through the entire building, that's a big loss. It was one of the scariest moments of the original game. You're in the prison, and there's nothing you can do because since the Turks caught you and brought you to those prisons. Take a nap, wake up, the door's unlocked, there's blood everywhere, there are these huge gash marks in the walls, the guards are dead, and the music playing at that moment is the scariest fucking thing possible. You don't know what's going on, but you just know that there is danger. And not having that moment, that's a huge loss. Also a huge loss is not being able to see President Shinra dead in his desk with Sephiroth's sword in his back. That was a big moment right there too. It's kind of shocking to realize, wait, Sephiroth is here? Or he was here? And he's against Shinra too? Could he be an ally of ours? To which Cloud promptly responds, no, he's not a fucking ally with us. I don't know what Sephiroth wants. He killed President Shinra, but he's not on our side. Believe me on this. Trust me on this, he's not our friend. And that coincides with Genova escaping and killing everyone. It's the combination of both those moments. It's a scary part of the game. We don't have that in the remake. Another weird moment, actually, this is one of the things that I actually sat down and thought about for a second. Here's what's weird about it. When Rufus shows up, there's actually no reason for Avalanche to fight him. I guess you wouldn't call them Avalanche. There's no reason for them to fight him. So from his perspective, his father is dead. He sees Avalanche there. So what's he supposed to assume? I mean, you don't know anything about him at this point. All you know is that he's the president's son, and he's there, and now that his father's dead, that makes him president by default. From his perspective, Avalanche are the evil ones, and he needs to take care of them. But in the original game, once again, there actually was a reason to fight Rufus, because when he showed up and introduced himself to Avalanche, he made it clear that he was just as, if not even more evil than his father. Rather than trying to use financial influence to control people, Rufus wanted to use fear to control everyone, wanted to keep everyone gripped in terror as the Shinra Corporation just razed the planet to the ground. There was a problem with him from the start. So when he shows up, there's a reason to fight him. There's a reason for Cloud to fight him and for everyone else to kind of get out of there. But the remake, he just shows up and they decide to fight him for no reason. They all could have run away. There's no reason to fight against Rufus. As far as they know, there's nothing wrong with him. And as the fight continues, there's still nothing wrong with him. I mean, yeah, he's slinging insults towards Cloud and everything, but again, from his perspective, Avalanche really are the bad guys. His father is dead. As far as he knows, they did it. And this kind of also leads to, again, another just big loss. Okay, well, again, it's another situation where it's not a make it or break it situation, but you lose some of the charm here. In the original game, when Rufus shows up, he sees Avalanche just sitting there, or well, not exactly Avalanche itself, but the main party sitting there. He just looks at them and just says, "Just who are you?" And the main characters in turn respond, "I'm Cloud, ex-soldier, first class. I'm from Avalanche." "Me too, a flower girl from the slums, a research specimen." To which Rufus can only respond, really, "What a motley crew." Because he is so unimpressed with them, honestly. It's a funny moment where the main characters they do this big introduction like the Power Rangers or something, and all Rufus can do is kind of shrug his shoulders and, okay, that's who you guys are. "So I'm Rufus Shinra. This company is mine now, and I'm about to go on a tyrannical rampage, even worse than what my father did." And then that's when he goes in his big speech about how he wants to use fear to control the populace, making him even worse than his father was, which gives you reason to actually fight him and stand against him, as opposed to what happens in the remake. But in the remake, when they do that introduction to Heidegger, when Barrett, Aerith, and Red the 13th do it, it comes off so much as them trying to evoke that moment of the original game, but it just falls flat because it's so obviously forced. It's not the same situation in the original game where they actually are trying to act tough towards Rufus in this moment where he's kind of vulnerable. But all Rufus does is just shrug his shoulders because he just doesn't care. He was only asking who they were just as formality. He doesn't really care who they are. The remake tries to make it a funny scene with all the soldiers pointing their guns at him and everything. It just doesn't work in that way.
So then, what is this ragtag group of misfits I see before me? Avalanche!
Local florist.
Lab rat dog.
And where are the rest of you?
Especially since in the original game, everyone was kind of just... they were just talking. They were just like stating facts. I'm from Soldier. I'm from Avalanche. I'm from Avalanche. I'm just a flower girl. Yeah, you guys had me locked up in a test tube back there, but you know, I'm here now, so yeah. They're just stating facts. That's probably what makes it so funny. But the remake tries to make them sound as tough as possible, and it doesn't work. It's really not funny. Which, you know, similarly, I forgot to mention this before, but the same kind of thing happens when Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith are threatening Don Corneo. The infamous, you know, give us the information we want, or I'm gonna cut them off, or I'm gonna rip them off, or I'm gonna smash them. Doesn't quite work, because again, it feels more natural in the original game than the remake, where they're clearly trying to force the comedic tone. Okay, so this really is just a nitpick, but honestly, it kind of bothered me when it happened. During the part of the game when Cloud is eavesdropping on the Shinra meeting, and when Hojo says something stinks, that part really didn't work for me. In the original game, when Scarlet says something stinks, she says it in kind of two ways. One, because the whole situation surrounding the meeting and what's going on with Avalanche and Shinra's business, something just doesn't add up for her. And also because the boardroom that they're meeting in is connected to the men's bathroom, and you know, the vents connect the two rooms together. So it's kind of funny in two ways. She's saying it for something that physically is bothering her, and for the whole situation surrounding what they were just talking about. But when Hojo says it, he kind of just says it just to say it, especially with his attitude about it, the way he says it. The way the line is delivered just makes it sound like they're trying to make a callback to the original game, and it just doesn't work on that level. It feels more like a throwaway line that they put in just to have the line in there. One of the newer additions added, and this is something I actually do praise the game for, is that when Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett are on their way out of the, I think it was the food court, they run into a couple of lower grade Shinra foot soldiers, and one of them recognizes Cloud from his time as a Shinra infantryman, and praises him for making it to soldier. And the guy, he's excited to see Cloud, and he runs off real quick and says, "Oh, I'm gonna go tell Kunzel about this." It was actually a really smart addition to the story, because again, it adds in the idea that what Cloud has been saying this entire time is not true. You know, it's another layer of, Now, no one from Soldier, or even President Shinra himself, seems to know who you are, Cloud, yet these two foot soldiers do know who you are. These two infantrymen, they recognize you by name and face. Something about that does not seem right here, Cloud. You know, it's another red flag that what Cloud has been saying this entire time has not been true. And honestly, again, it's a smart addition to the story that I actually appreciate. So past all that kind of brings me to the end of the game. And, you know, the one thing I didn't mention so far, the biggest change, I feel, are these ghosts that are just flying around. I think they're called Whispers. I think that's what they were called. And I don't know what the point of them is. Like, the idea is that, like, they interfere with destiny or something like that. Like, they see when people are going off their destined course of life or something like that, and they intercede to make sure to put them back on that course or something like that. Give or take. These weird ghosts or whispers or whatever you want to call them, the way that they're interfering with the story, or the way that they're integrated into the story, I don't see the point of this. Like, obviously, I guess the future installments are going to elaborate on this more, but it just doesn't make any sense. Especially like towards the end of the game, then they become a boss rush. We have to fight several of them, plus a giant one, and then deal with Sephiroth too. Like, and the end of the game even like basically recreates the final battle against Sephiroth within Cloud's mind in the original game. Like, I don't get why they're doing this. Like, the way this whole thing ends doesn't make any sense, especially like how it ends. The game ends as if it's more so becoming, you know, Aerith's story about trying to fight Sephiroth rather than Cloud's story. Cloud wanted to fight Sephiroth because of what happened in the past, and also because Sephiroth was secretly manipulating Cloud. But then it turns into Aerith wanting to stop Sephiroth. I keep getting things mixed up because he's a danger to the planet. Yada yada yada. Okay, but he was always a danger to the planet, though. Cloud knew that from the start. he knew Sephiroth was an issue from the start, so that's why he wanted to fight against him so badly. But now you're just shifting that narrative to Aerith for some reason, and these ghosts flying around seem to be a big part of that. The final string of boss fights could not be more forced if you tried, and the direction that Square is going with this is just confusing. The story moving in this direction makes very little sense, especially with how vague it all is, and especially when you consider that Square is going to have to take criticism of this part 1 of this remake project into consideration. It's going to affect how each new installment is actually done. So, like, I don't know how far ahead they planned with these ghosts flying around, or how they're going to change the story to that extent, but like, it doesn't look good thus far. If the story had been constructed as, like, actually an alternate universe type of story, where these ghosts are maybe changing things, like, it at that point it wouldn't be a remake anyway. It already isn't one. But if you positioned it like that, like it's an alternate universe story where these ghosts are changing in the course of the original game story. So now you're having this new adventure with these familiar characters. That could have been one thing. People still would have wanted a faithful remake, but having this new adventure with these characters because of these ghosts affecting everything, you could have done that instead. Like, and again, brand new adventure. Not trying to hit the same story beats, but expanding things here and there, and then again padding the story the way they did. But actually trying to change the world of Final Fantasy VII to an extent for this game, for this alternate universe story. If they had done that instead, the ghost thing and the way things have been changed already would have made more sense. But the way things are now, it's a confusing jumble, and I have no clue why Square thought this was a good idea to do. Also, I think they missed the mark with Aerith a bit. She sounds like a fucking lost puppy in the game.
But you cannot go dressed like that.
Huh?
I could never send Corneo a candidate wearing such a plain-looking getup. Doing so would call my position as one of the trio into question.
Is something wrong with my outfit? Well, I think it's pretty cool.
Now, I said before, like, Aerith is tough in her own way. She can't fight like Tifa can, or even Cloud can, but she can take care of herself for the most part. And again, yeah, she's tough in her own way, but she comes off as so meek in a few places in this game. It's weird. And speaking of Aerith, this leads me back to my complaints about Tifa. Not Tifa herself, obviously. I love Tifa. It's just, I've said this before in other videos, Tifa's design in the game, her redesign is what bothers me. Sizing down her chest and then even redesigning her actual clothes compared to everyone else, that's weird to me. I've said before how Tifa's fan service-ness is actually important to her as a character in comparison to Aerith and their relationship with Cloud. Tifa is supposed to be the busty, sexy chick with a heart of gold and a very soft personality, while Aerith is supposed to dress more conservatively, but yet have this very outgoing nature and is very flirty. And the remake takes a bit of that away, along with some of the story and character changes, which, again, it's mars the spirit of the original game. It's just odd to me that you would shrink Tifa's bust size because that would be problematic. Yet, Jessie gets to keep her boob armor. How did nobody complain about that? I always thought that was weird. I mean, sure, maybe having a chest plate that's maybe bigger than average to accommodate her breasts, but actually having her chest plate is pointed. How is that not an issue? How was Tifa's design an issue for people, but that wasn't? And then there's also Scarlet later on in the game, who has her cleavage out in full display in the sexy red outfit. But that's fine too. And then again, also actually physically changing the way her outfit looks. No one else got their outfits changed much, or at all even for certain characters, but Tifa's was. And because apparently her character design is problematic for people, well, certain people. I've said it before that I don't necessarily need Tifa to be bouncing around as she's moving around the game world or anything like that, but to change her like that, because some people might not like her physical appearance anyway, and like ignore her as a character, that I think is again another disservice, another strange thing to change for an obvious reason, but a reason that really should have just been ignored, and Square should have just, you know, kept going forward with what they thought was the right idea, rather than trying to appeal to people who really wouldn't have paid attention one way or the other. The people who would have complained also would never have bought the game. So to try to ingratiate yourselves with them, you know, is a mistake. And while I'm on the subject of Tifa's design, it's a small gripe, but I didn't care much for the other outfits you can get for her in the game. The purple dress and the Chinese dress and the geisha dress, I guess you could probably call it. It's close to being a geisha dress, at least. I didn't care for those outfits either. I've always viewed Tifa as having more of a Western style to her than an Eastern one. But it makes sense to have these kind of outfits for her, considering that Tifa is kind of an example of the Yamato Nadeshiko archetype. The more Eastern-inspired outfits make sense for her in that way, I guess. But personally, I think she looks better in more modern, more Western-style outfits. Her main outfit suits her the most. You know, the kind of monochrome design they have to her, the black and white everywhere, plus the red eyes. Her Avalanche children outfit suits her very well too. All in all, I just think outfits like those fit her more than what we had in the game. The purple outfit too, the purple dress, I just didn't like it. It's kind of too skimpy in my opinion, which is funny considering that I like the other revealing outfit of hers, her default outfit, more than this purple dress, which I'd say is skimpy, kind of frilly in a way. Well, it's frilly on the ends, I guess. I don't know. I just never liked it. In a way, it looks kind of like lingerie to me, or like a nightgown, I guess. Just the way it looks. It just never sat right with me. None of this is a criticism of the game. These are just small personal gripes of mine. You know, this doesn't detract from the game's quality in any way. It's just her main outfit suits her the best, I feel, or her Avalanche children outfit, and I just kind of think the other ones in the game just were not my cup of tea, personally. I also wasn't fond of the majority of the voice cast in the game. Steve Burton as Cloud, and Bo Billingsley as Barrett, Rachel Lee Cook as Tifa, Rick Gomez as Zack. They were absolutely perfect in the game. Well, in past games, I mean. With the current voice cast, well, I'll put it this way. Cloud does not sound convinced of what he's saying.
Should have asked for more money.
It very much sounds like acting with Cloud, if that makes any sense. Like, when Steve Burton was playing Cloud in Kingdom Hearts and Avalanche Children and Crisis Core, it sounded natural.
The great god of the underworld is afraid of a kid? Sorry, but my contract says...
I know! You think I don't know? I wrote the contract!
I'm looking for someone. Hades promised to help. I tried to exploit the power of darkness, but it backfired. I fell into darkness, and I couldn't find the light. I think I'll pass.
But the current voice actor for him really does sound like he's reading lines off of a script.
Maybe they did. But I've got a feeling he's still alive. I'm not cut out for this crap.
With Tifa, they were trying to go for kind of a sexy voice with her, which you could do, I guess, but... And it goes along with Tifa's character. She dresses like a biker chick, you know, she looks sexy, sure, but that's not really her personality. She doesn't have the sexy personality type. Rachel Lee Cook's softer voice, that we saw in Kingdom Hearts 2, Avalanche Children, the Dissidia games, that fits her a lot better, in my opinion, than what we have in the remake.
Hey you! I'm looking for somebody. Have any of you seen a guy with spiky hair? Sorry to bother you.
Does Cloud live here?
I guess he does.
Rick Gomez as Zack was absolutely perfect. That was spot on casting with him.
Stupid Hades. Next time I'll put him in his place. Oh yeah, you're the champ. We gotta celebrate. Hey, how about one date? Fair enough. And I'm still a work in progress after all.
Huh?
Well, how about this? I become a hero, then we go on a date.
I can't make any promises.
Yes! Great, it's settled. Herohood, here I come.
So what if it looks hopeless?
If it were me, I still wouldn't give up. Embrace your dreams. And, whatever happens, protect your honor as soldier. Well, okay. You never made soldier. But it's what's in here that counts.
And especially when you... Well, the scene when Zack fights off the Shinra infantrymen. 100% his current voice actor for the remake butchered that scene.
Boy, oh boy. The price of freedom is steep.
Boy, oh boy. The price of freedom is steep.
It sounds like acting rather than a natural conversation, rather than the character saying these things naturally. And of course, you can't forget Quentin Flynn as Reno. He was perfect for that role.
You got it.
Like, Reno is this laid-back, sarcastic, slacker kind of guy, and Quentin Flynn played that part perfectly.
You know, you're pretty heavy.
Current guy is all right, but he just does not have the same sort of memorability as Quentin Flynn does as Reno.
It's nothing personal, bitch!
Sephiroth's voice actor is no good either, in my opinion. When George Newborn played Sephiroth, it was this deep, menacing voice. He sounded intimidating. He sounded scary. Like, even in Crisis Core, before Sephiroth became evil, when you heard him speak, it was like this air of power and superiority to him whenever he spoke.
Loveless. Act 1. How can I not, when you've beaten it into my head? Good to see you. Cloud. Your geostigma is gone. The last thoughts of geostigma's dead. Those remnants will join the life stream and girdle the planet, choking it, corroding it. What I want, Cloud, is to sail the darkness of the cosmos with this planet as my vessel, just as my mother did long ago. Then one day we'll find a new planet, and on its soil we'll create a shining future. Well, that's up to you, Cloud.
But the new guy, again, it just doesn't sound right. He doesn't sound powerful. He doesn't sound intimidating. He doesn't sound like this almost otherworldly soldier or swordsman that Sephiroth is usually portrayed as.
I am. Oh, you need not remind me. It was the crowning moment of our time together. But that was then, and this is now. I have a favor to ask. Our beloved planet is dying. Slowly. Silently. Painfully. Can you bear to see the planet suffer? Cloud.
It all just sounds really off when you compare them to the original voice actors. I think the one voice I was actually fine with, though, was Barrett's current voice actor.
Hey, quit talking out your ass.
I would still prefer Bo Billingsley, because, believe it or not, Bo Billingsley was always how I imagined Barrett sounding.
You look after Mama.
Barrett!
Marlene better be safe, huh?
I guess watching Cowboy Bebop all those years ago and then playing Final Fantasy VII for the first time, I don't know, I guess it somehow Bo Billingsley's voice for Jet kind of clicked with me, and I kind of transferred that over to Barrett somehow. And I was surprised as hell, pleasantly surprised, when Advent Children finally came around and it was Bo Billingsley voicing him, because apparently other people had the same thought that I had, that Bo Billingsley would be perfect for Barrett. And he still is perfect for him.
What up, boo? It's Merrick. I am the man. Oil Cloud. I just found the biggest damn oil field you ever seen. Surveying's done, so I should be able to get out there and see Marlene soon. You let her know, all right, Spikey?
I mean, in fact, he and Steve Burton did play Barrett and Cloud in that first gameplay trailer for the remake, if I remember correctly. It sounded like them.
We're paying you more than a few, Gil. You best be worth it.
Barrett's voice actor in the remake is actually pretty good. He actually plays the part really well. For the guy basically being the replacement for the original, he does a bang-up job. I will say that. I won't hide that.
You magnificent son of a bitch! Bring it in!
So, where are the others?
Man.
It'll never happen, obviously. But if Square decided to go back and bring the original voice actors back, but they kept Barrett's current voice actor, I would be fine with that. Again, I'd prefer Bo Billingsley to come back. I prefer him. But if they brought all the original voice actors back, except for Bo Billingsley, Barrett's current voice actor is doing a great job. I'll say that much. He's doing a very good job. Yet another issue I had, surprise, surprise, I feel like the music in the game isn't that great. I feel like it's overproduced in a way. There were plenty of songs from the original game that were playing that I didn't even recognize what they were until maybe the song was halfway through playing. A battle song for the game, Those Who Fight, didn't sound as... Well, put it this way, it sounded like they're trying to make it as epic as possible, but in doing so, it kind of loses the touch of the original. The original song it just pulls you in immediately as soon as the battle starts. It's hyper-focused and really pulls you into the mindset that you're in the middle of a fight right now. The version of the remake, though, they added so many extra parts to it, they added so many instruments to it that it doesn't even sound remotely the same. And neither did the boss theme either. They put so much into that, it doesn't sound exactly the same. And obviously, it shouldn't sound exactly the same. This is a remake after all, I get that. But you compare, again, what they did with Advent Children, or even Crisis Core, they took those same songs and remixed them a bit. They sounded the same, but they did sound a bit more than that. They sound like remixes, which is what people expected. But the versions of the songs in the remake sound like they went way too far with them, trying to make them sound as epic and cool as possible for this remake, but they just took it a few steps further than they should have. Another example is the Shinra Building. In the original game, the Shinra Building sounds intimidating as hell. When you get to that building, first of all, the first thing you see are Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett as they're about to make their way into the building, and the music playing is intimidating. You know you're going into the belly of the beast with that music playing. It's dark, it's ominous, and you're preparing yourself for the worst. That's the kind of feeling that music evokes. The remake, though, sounds far less intimidating and sounds almost like it's a day at the office, almost. You're just walking around this building without too much of a care in the world. It's just not as interesting of a song as the original games. One Winged Angel was butchered too. Again, same issue. They're trying to do what they can to make it sound as epic as possible, even more than the original. I mean, I think the most epic version of the song was probably Advent One Winged Angel from the movie. They took time to put a speed metal section of the song right in the center of it, right before the final parts of the song played, right before when Cloud is finally about to dish the final few attacks to Sephiroth. It's such a seamless addition, and the song sounds so much better that way. And then the Crisis Core version, The World's Enemy, that used more sophisticated technology to make that song, more live instruments, I think, or unless they made them on a computer again. But it did its own remix of the beginning of the song, adding a new section to it to make the song sound refreshed for this new game. And it worked perfectly. It sounded like an even more, it sounded like a modern rendition of the song. Like if they remade One Winged Angel in 2007, I think it was, when Crisis Core came out. The classical orchestral music and instruments and everything. Like that's like The World's Enemy is kind of what the song would sound like. But in the remake, One Winged Angel sounded, again, overproduced. Like they were trying to add so much into it to make it sound even cooler than it already was. The song's fine. It's fine the way it is. You just have to do like what Crisis Core did. Just make a modern version of the song. And if you can be inventive enough, much like Crisis Core and Advent Children, add a couple of extra sections to the song. Just one section that actually can blend in flawlessly with this rendition of the song, with what you're trying to portray with this song. But unfortunately, they didn't do that, and One Winged Angel is another song that suffers for that, in my opinion. It just does not sound very good. So somehow, doing all of this, I lost some footage here at the end, so I'm going to re-record this part, unfortunately. So, I don't want this video completely 100% negative. There were some things in the game that I liked, like I mentioned earlier, like Don Corneo's disgustingness, which was ramped up, and the same thing goes for the rest of his men in that section of the game. Things like showing how much of an impact that Aerith had in the Sector 5 slums was another good addition too. The remake shows just how much of an impact that she has on people around her. Everyone in Sector 5 loved Aerith to death, and showing something like that shows just how big of an impact her eventual death has in the game. It didn't just hurt her mother, it hurt everyone in the Sector 5 slums rather. This kind of goes back to the original game when you find two kids who decide to tend to the flowers in Aerith's church after she's gone, waiting for her to come back, and unfortunately, she won't come back, but showing something like that was a good addition. That Aerith just wasn't just this sweet, innocent girl who joined up to the party, that she had this huge impact on everyone around her, and her loss is going to be even bigger because of that. Because of what we were shown and how much she touched everyone's lives around her, not just the main characters of the game. Even though Final Fantasy 15 had a very mixed reception rather, one thing that was universally praised was the friendship between the four main characters. Their banter in between battles and picking up side missions and everything, there was just a greater sense of camaraderie between the four of them than there has been in any previous Final Fantasy game, and that was something that was praised by everyone, even people who didn't like the game. So it was great to see that Square took that in mind and kind of added that sort of relationship between the characters in this remake. The way they all talk with each other in between missions sometimes, and how when a battle ends, they'll say something just like in Final Fantasy 15. That's a great addition too, because now it seems that they're not just working together because of circumstances. Like, they all met each other during the course of the story, so now they're working together to fight against Sephiroth or Shinra or something. They seem much closer than they did in the original game, and that's appreciated. I kind of felt that for every other Final Fantasy game, everyone just kind of met each other and joined up with the party just because. Just because the story said to join up with them. But Final Fantasy 15 did something a little different, and it's great to see that the Final Fantasy VII Remake took that in mind and expanded on that. I think the best part of it is the way that Barrett always gushes about Marlene. Barrett being a father that way was a very interesting addition to the original game, and seeing him, you get to see him being joyful as a father in the original game too. That's there, but we get to see more of that in the remake, and that's fun to see. I love that. I love seeing how much he loves being a father to Marlene and how much Marlene loves him. I would hope that later on in the game they still show bits and pieces of that, even though Barrett's going to be away from Marlene for quite some time. Especially when eventually went to dine later on in the game. I really wonder how that's going to turn out. And I'll say that the motorcycle chase out of Midgar in the remake, I'll admit it, a lot more thrilling than it was in the original. The original was basically just a mini game, which you could actually play again once you get to the Gold Saucer. I will admit that the way it was done in the remake was a lot more exciting than in the original. Instead of fighting the Shinra guards on motorcycles and then getting to the end and then doing a standard boss fight, you're actually fighting that giant robot as you're going. So that was another really good addition. I actually really did enjoy that. And as I mentioned before, the whole interaction between Cloud and those two Shinra guards before was another really good addition, a really smart addition, I'll admit. So, overall, as you might have guessed, despite some of the good stuff that I actually did like in this remake, this reboot really is what it is, not even really a remake, I just came away with too many negative impressions of it. I said before that originally I was going to wait until all the episodes were released so I can play the game, just play every episode back to back. That was my original plan. But I'm glad I did this, because now I can see I'm just not thrilled with what Square is doing with this. So really, no matter what Square does for future installments, I can't say I'm too excited for it. I won't say that I will never play those future installments. Maybe down the line I will, but for right now, I don't think I will. I'll keep my ear to the ground, and kind of listen here and there for what's going on. But as it is, I think the only way I'm going to play them is future installments anytime soon. Not even anytime soon, but just like when it's all said and done. Probably when they do finally come out with a complete collection and it's on sale in the bargain bin somewhere is probably when I'll finally play those additional installments. I think Square really missed the mark here. They got a lot of stuff right with this reboot, but a lot of stuff wrong at the same time. And that kind of makes me a bit worried for any future games that we may get remakes of too. There's kind of a rumor going on now that they may be doing a remake of Final Fantasy IX, or maybe working on one at least. But regardless, if this is what Square's going to be doing with their remakes, this is kind of a problem. I feel, at least. But regardless, if this is what Square's going to be doing, I'd be a bit worried for any future remakes. Final Fantasy VI fans, Final Fantasy VIII fans, 9, 10, 12 even. If Square ever decides to tackle those games, I would be worried. Because the Final Fantasy VII reboot has shown that Square can go... like as much effort that they put into their games sometimes, they can kind of go too far. And I think this is one of those instances. And it really sucks too, because if Square decides that maybe they did go too far in a few places with the Final Fantasy VII reboot, then they may decide to pull back on that for anything in the future. So FF6, 8, 9, 10, whatever, if those get redone, Square may realize, okay, maybe all we need to do is just update the graphics and music and just keep everything else the same. And if they do that, great. But at the same time, it's gonna suck because, once again, like with the original game, Final Fantasy VII had to be the guinea pig for this. Sure, I don't mind the visuals for the original game. I like them, actually. But Final Fantasy VII was kind of in that weird transition period between Final Fantasy VI and 8, where Square didn't exactly know how to go from, top-down 2D visuals to full 3D visuals. And Final Fantasy VII was kind of that stopgap for them. And they kind of experimented as well with Final Fantasy Tactics later on. But come 8, they kind of got their heads around the technology and the idea of how to transition to these full 3D environments. And by that point in time, they figured it out. But FF7 kind of had to suffer for that. And if Square decides for any future remakes that they're going to do the exact opposite of what they did here and just stick to the original core story and gameplay and everything, well, again, great. But once again, that comes at the expense of what Final Fantasy VII could have been. So yeah, ultimately, Final Fantasy VII Remake, if you want to call it that, is not even really a remake. It's not like a 1 out of 10 game or a 0 out of 10 game or anything like that. It's not that, but I really do feel like it mars the story and the universe of the original Final Fantasy VII game. And yeah, like I said, Square went too far with this one. And I'm not looking forward to what's coming in the future. If you haven't played the original Final Fantasy VII, trust me, give it a shot. It still holds up to this day. It's still a fantastic game. And like I said before, some of the changes Square made were good. Some of the additions they made were good. A lot of the other ones that they made were not good. Were just slows things down too much or makes things more complicated than they need to be. Final Fantasy VII is more or less perfect the way it is. I just wish Square themselves could see that. So, that's it. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.